I used to believe that after turning 68, life couldn't surprise me anymore. I thought I had already walked through the worst storms a man could face. Losing my wife, raising my daughter as a single parent, surviving layoffs and financial uncertainty, and rebuilding my life again and again. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for the moment my daughter, Emily, took her last breath in my arms. People say time heals, but when you watch your only child fade away day after day, the clock becomes an enemy. Emily had been battling cancer for 4 brutal months. Each week took another piece of her strength, her color, her fire, but never her spirit. On the morning of March 22, 2024, at 6:47 a.m., my world cracked silently. Emily's fingers loosened from mine, her chest rose one last time, and then stillness. The kind that feels like the earth itself has stopped spinning. The nurses murmured condolences, but their voices felt distant, as if someone had stuffed the entire world inside a box and closed the lid. I didn't cry right away. I simply held her hand, cold and soft, the same hand I had held on her first day of school, on her graduation day, and when she signed the lease for her first shop. Emily Miller, daughter, fighter, dreamer, was gone. 3 days before her death, Emily had called me into her hospital room. Her voice was thin, but steady. She had always been stubborn. "Dad, sit with me. I need to give you something." She handed me a sealed envelope. Inside were legal documents, a personal letter, and a revelation that shook me. Emily had built a fortune, nearly $29 million, through her fashion brand and real estate investments. And in her will, she had named me her sole heir. "Dad, everything I built knowing I had you behind me. You were my strength when I had none. Please use this money to live the life you sacrificed for me." Those words still haunt me. They feel like both a gift and a burden. March 25th. St. Francis Grand Church. A place meant for peace, filled instead with grief so thick it was hard to breathe. Family members, Emily's employees, old friends. Everyone came to say goodbye. I sat in the front row, unable to focus on anything but her closed casket. And then a hand touched my shoulder. I turned and saw a tall man in a black suit, early 40s, with a face I hadn't seen in a decade. Tears ran down his cheeks. Too perfectly, too theatrically. "David," he whispered, voice trembling. "I'm so sorry for the loss of our Emily." Our Emily. The words pierced me like a blade. This was Daniel Peterson, Emily's ex-husband, if you could even call him that. A man who had evaporated from her life the moment she told him she was pregnant. A man who left her drowning in debt, emotional wreckage, and a tragedy no mother should bear alone. He had the audacity to show up dressed in mourning, as though he had any right. "What are you doing here, Daniel?" I asked, barely able to contain my anger in a sacred place. "I came to say goodbye to the love of my life," he said, wiping his eyes with a handkerchief. Love? He didn't know the meaning of the word. Then he walked past me like he belonged there, seating himself right behind me, close to the immediate family section, as if he had earned the spot. People who didn't know the history offered him their condolences, thinking he was the devastated widower. He even approached the casket, resting his hand on the polished wood, whispering something I couldn't hear. The theatrics made my blood boil. After the church service, we moved to the cemetery. Daniel stayed close to me the entire time, hovering like a vulture circling a fresh carcass. His presence felt wrong, heavy, calculating, not grief-stricken. When the casket was finally lowered, Daniel stepped closer. "David," he murmured, "we need to talk. About Emily, and about the future." The future? What future could exist between us? The man who shattered my daughter's life dared to speak of the future as if he had a role in it. Something was terribly off. His voice, his posture, the timing of his appearance. It wasn't sadness driving him. Something colder was hiding behind those damp eyelashes. Instinct screamed that Daniel had not come to say goodbye. He had come with an agenda, and I was about to find out exactly what it was. After the burial, most mourners drove to my sister Linda's house for the reception. Daniel didn't follow. Instead, He waited for me beside a sleek black Mercedes, arms crossed, grief wiped from his face like makeup removed after a performance. "David," he said, lighting a cigarette, "I think it's time we talk openly." His tone, it wasn't sorrow. It was negotiation. "Emily was still my wife legally," he continued. "Under state law, I may be entitled to half of her estate." I froze. "You're lying," I said. "You divorced her in 2014. He smiled. Not a warm smile, a predator's smile. "Well, funny thing. Seems some paperwork was never finalized properly. My lawyers believe I'm entitled to claim at least 15 million. 15 million. He said it like he was ordering lunch. I stared at him, stunned. This wasn't grief. This was a hunt. And he had been waiting for this moment. "You have 1 week, David," Daniel said, flicking ash onto the pavement. "Give me my share voluntarily, or I'll drag your daughter's name through the mud in court, and the media will eat it up." He opened his door, gave me a casual nod, and drove away like he hadn't just spit on my daughter's grave. As his car disappeared, something ignited inside me. Rage, yes, but also a determination I hadn't felt in years. He wanted a war? Good. He had no idea who he was dealing with. Great, continuing the rewritten story. For the first time since Emily's passing, I slept without nightmares. Not because the pain had lessened, far from it, but because Daniel Peterson had awakened something inside me that grief alone could not resolve. He thought I would be an easy target. An old man, broken, alone, vulnerable. He had no idea I had spent my entire life protecting Emily from the world. And now, even in death, I would protect her again. The morning after his arrogant threat by the Mercedes, I gathered every document Emily had left me in the sealed envelope. If Daniel wanted to challenge my daughter's will, I needed someone I trusted, someone who loved Emily like family. There was only one person for that. Michael Clark had been our family's attorney for almost 20 years. He helped Emily open her first store, expand her business, and eventually draft the will that now protected her legacy. When I walked into his office on Michigan Avenue, he stood up immediately and hugged me. "David, I'm so sorry. Emily was one of the brightest clients I ever had." I nodded silently, then placed Daniel's threat on the table. Every word of it. Michael listened without interrupting, but his jaw clenched tighter with each sentence. "That man hasn't changed," he finally said. "And if he's getting aggressive, it means he's desperate." He opened a thick file drawer behind him. I kept Emily's divorce documents, and from what I recall, she was very intentional about cutting Daniel out of her life permanently. But let me verify everything. As Michael dug through the folders, he paused. "David, give me a day to review every single document. Meanwhile, keep your guard up. If Daniel is planning something, he may already have laid groundwork." Groundwork. The word made me uneasy. Daniel had appeared at the funeral too confident, too prepared, too rehearsed. This wasn't a spontaneous claim. He had been planning this. Emily's assistant, Patricia Johnson, had been like a second daughter to me. She knew every detail of Emily's work life, her meetings, her stress, her struggles. Everything Emily never wanted to bother me with. I called her immediately. "Mr. Miller," she said softly, "I'll meet you in an hour. There's something I think you need to know." We met in a small cafe near Emily's main office building. Patricia looked exhausted, almost frightened. "Emily told me never to involve you unless something happened," she whispered. "And after what you described, it's time you know the truth." "The truth about what?" She swallowed hard. Daniel didn't just appear at the funeral. He had been trying to get close to Emily again for months. I stared at her, stunned. "What do you mean, months?" "She never mentioned him." "Because she didn't want to worry you," Patricia replied. "But Daniel, he called the office more than a dozen times." I felt a jolt in my chest. "He what?" Patricia nodded. "At first he used fake names, but Emily recognized his voice instantly. After the first call, she told me, if he ever contacts the office again, hang up immediately." "And did he?" Patricia took a shaky breath. "He not only kept calling, he showed up. My stomach tightened. In January, she continued. He came in person. Emily wasn't there. She had chemotherapy that day. But Daniel insisted on seeing me. What did he ask? You're not going to believe this, Patricia said. He asked about Emily's business, her financials, her assets, her property holdings. He even asked if she had made a will. I felt the air leave my lungs. And when I refused to answer, Patricia added, he offered me $500 to just confirm if Emily was as wealthy as the magazines claimed. My hands curled into fists. The audacity, the sickness, the premeditation. Emily had been fighting cancer, and this man, this vulture, had been circling her, calculating his opportunity. Patricia, do you have anything? Proof? Recordings? Messages? She reached into her bag and placed a small USB drive on the table. Emily asked me to record every call after the first incident. My breath caught. Recordings. Yes, and there's more. Emily suspected Daniel might try something legally, so she told me to document anything unusual. Patricia, what's on those recordings? She looked me dead in the eye. Things that Daniel will never want a judge to hear. That night, I sat alone in my study, Emily's photos surrounding me like silent witnesses. I plugged the USB drive into my laptop. There were 12 audio files. I clicked the first one. Patricia, Daniel's voice said, slick and confident. I just want to know if Emily's success is real. You know how it is. I don't want to waste my time if she doesn't have anything to offer. My blood boiled. He spoke about my daughter the way a thief speaks about a locked house, calculating, assessing. Another recording. I heard Emily has several million stashed away. If that's true, I think we could resolve our past issues. Everyone deserves a second chance, especially when there's so much money at stake. I gripped the table edge until my knuckles went white. But the worst recording, the one that froze my veins, came last. Daniel's voice, colder than ice. Do you know if Emily has a will? Because technically, if our divorce wasn't finalized properly, I could still have automatic spousal rights. And if she dies, that money shouldn't go to her old man. It should come back to me. I slammed the laptop shut. He knew. He knew Emily was dying. He knew she was fragile. And he was preparing for the moment she would be gone. This was no coincidence. This was a premeditated attack. And Daniel had just declared war. Great, continuing the rewritten story. I barely slept that night. Not because of grief, though grief sat beside me like a silent ghost, but because of something far more dangerous. Daniel Peterson had been preparing for this inheritance long before Emily died. He wasn't acting out of grief, nostalgia, or guilt. He was acting out of desperation. And by the time the sun rose, I would discover just how deep his desperation ran. At 7:20 a.m., my phone rang. The number was unknown, but something told me to answer. David Miller? Yes. This is Andrew Moore. We met years ago at one of Emily's store launch events. I remembered Andrew. Sharp mind, worked in finance, the kind of man who knew everything about everyone without ever being obvious about it. I heard about what happened at the funeral, Andrew said. And I have information you'll want. What kind? He hesitated, then lowered his voice. About Daniel Peterson. Every muscle in my body tensed. Daniel is drowning. Financially, legally, personally. Everything in his life is collapsing. That's why he resurfaced. Tell me everything. Andrew sighed like a man about to unload a barrel of bad news. Daniel was running a private consulting firm. It crashed 2 years ago after a series of bad crypto investments. I clenched my jaw. He also has gambling problems, Andrew continued. His name shows up repeatedly on internal watch lists for high-risk losses at several Chicago casinos. How bad? Over $80,000 in debt. And those aren't friendly debts. Those are debts you pay or you disappear. The words echoed coldly inside me. So you're telling me, I said, that Daniel didn't show up to Emily's funeral because he cared. He showed up because he smelled money. Yes, and David. He's been trying everything. What do you mean everything? He's visited banks pretending to be a financial agent. He's inquired about Emily's accounts. He's been asking questions about her will. He's been trying to access private information. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Why didn't anyone report him? He used different names and he waved cash around. Some people didn't realize it was illegal. My hands shook, not from fear but from anger, the kind that simmered in your veins until it became fuel. Andrew, I said quietly, thank you. This confirms more than you know. David, keep your guard up. A man with debt and nothing to lose is a very dangerous man. He was right. By afternoon, I was in Michael's office again. He had spread documents across his desk like pieces of a puzzle. David, he said, tapping a folder, you need to breathe, because this is going to make you angry. I'm listening. He handed me 2 papers. These are the official divorce records, he began. And the good news is they are complete, fully finalized, legally binding. So Daniel's claim is false. Completely. He has no marital rights, not even a sliver. I exhaled in relief, but Michael wasn't done. However, he continued, flipping another document, Daniel is attempting to exploit one minor administrative loophole, the way a desperate man looks for tiny cracks in a sealed vault. What loophole? Emily filed one of the final forms through an outdated system. It doesn't affect legality, but Daniel's lawyers could try to confuse a judge with it. I frowned. Can they win with that? Not if we present evidence correctly. But Daniel doesn't need to win. He needs to drag the case long enough to pressure you into a settlement. I understood immediately. He didn't need justice. He needed money. Fast. Michael leaned back, steepling his fingers. David, this wasn't spontaneous. Daniel was preparing long before he showed up. And that means he's hiding something, and doing it urgently. I already knew he was drowning in debt. But there was something worse lurking beneath the surface. I could feel it. 2 days later, Patricia called again. Mr. Miller, I remembered something else. Her voice trembled. Please come to my apartment. It's important. When I arrived, she had her laptop open and a folder full of papers spread across her dining table. After you left, she whispered, I checked Emily's private calendar. There were 2 meetings with Daniel earlier this year. What? She never told you because she didn't want to upset you while you were taking care of her. My heart pounded. Emily had been sick. Too sick to deal with an emotional parasite like Daniel. When did he meet her? February 28th and March 14th. 2 dates. Both just weeks before she died. Did Emily tell you what happened during those meetings? I asked. Patricia nodded. She said he wanted money. He tried to reconcile. He hinted at legal actions. But she refused to tell me details. She said, she didn't want you worrying. A heaviness settled in my chest. Emily had fought 2 battles. One against cancer, and one against Daniel. A terminal patient shouldn't have needed to defend herself from an ex-husband trying to exploit her dying days. Then Patricia pointed at her laptop. I have the recordings of both meetings. My heart stopped. Emily recorded them? Yes. She installed audio recording in her private office after Daniel first came. I stared at her. You're telling me you have recordings of Daniel threatening her? Patricia nodded slowly. Not just threatening her, Mr. Miller. You're about to hear exactly how far he was willing to go. When the audio began, Emily's voice played first, weak, tired, breathless, but still sharp as ever. Daniel, why are you here? I'm only here to talk, Daniel replied, his tone dripping false sweetness. You abandoned me. You left me the night I told you I was pregnant. That was years ago, Emily. Water under the bridge. Silence. Then Daniel's real motive emerged. I know you've built something big. You're worth millions now. And, well, I think I deserve a cut. I clenched my fists. Emily answered firmly, even with her frail voice. You deserve nothing. Daniel chuckled coldly. Emily, don't make this complicated. You're not going to be around forever. Silence. Then Emily whispered, are you threatening me? No, Daniel said smoothly. Just stating a fact. If you give me 5 million now, I promise not to complicate things after you're gone. My chest tightened painfully. He was circling a dying woman, negotiating with her like she was merchandise. The recording clicked off. I sat back, my pulse hammering. Patricia looked at me with sorrow in her eyes. Mr. Miller, that wasn't the worst one. I thought the first recording was bad enough. A man threatening a dying woman, circling her like a vulture smelling the end. But Patricia was right. I wasn't prepared for the second one. She clicked on the file labeled March 14th, Office. And what I heard next made my stomach churn. Emily's breathing was shallow in this recording. You could hear the exhaustion in every syllable. Chemo had taken so much from her. Yet she still spoke with that quiet strength she'd always carried. Daniel, she said, sounding fatigued. I already told you last time, there's nothing left between us. Why are you back? Daniel's voice followed, slick as oil. Because I've been thinking, Emily, about us, about your situation. Situation, he said, as if her cancer were an inconvenience to his plans. I got the sense, he continued, that I may have underestimated your assets. Emily sighed deeply, the sound painful to hear. How do you know anything about my assets? Daniel paused, and his answer chilled me. Let's just say, I have people who tell me things. Emily inhaled sharply, fear creeping into her tone. You're watching me? Come on, Daniel replied, amused. Don't make it sound so dramatic. I just want to know what's fair. Fair, Emily repeated. You abandoned me, took my savings, disappeared. Why on earth would you think you deserve anything? Daniel didn't hesitate. Because I was your husband. Legally, in certain technical aspects, I still might be. I felt rage flood through me. Michael would later confirm all of this was a lie. But Daniel didn't care. He relied on confusion, pressure, fear. Especially Emily's fear. Then came the line that made my hands shake so hard I had to steady myself on the table. Emily, your illness is terminal. My sources tell me you don't have long. When you're gone, your father is going to inherit everything. But he's an old man. He doesn't need millions. I nearly threw the laptop across the room. Daniel continued in the recording. I, on the other hand, could create a life with that money. A future. It makes more sense for me to have a share. Emily's voice cracked, but not with fear. With disgust. You're unbelievable, she whispered. You think because I'm dying, you can talk me into giving you money? Not talk, Daniel said, his tone darkening. Reason. Then his voice sharpened, cold, sharp, deliberate. If you don't give me 15 million now, I'll make sure your estate is tied up in court for years. Your father will be dragged through the mud. Your business will be scrutinized. Everything you built will be frozen. Emily's breath hitched, barely audible, but unmistakably fearful. And I'll win eventually, he added, because I'm not afraid to fight dirty. The silence that followed on the recording was suffocating. Emily finally spoke. You're a monster. Daniel chuckled softly. No, I'm a man who understands opportunity. Then came the last blow. I'm giving you one more chance. 15 million now, or the fight of your father's life after you're gone. There was a sound. Emily's chair scraping, the door opening. Get out, she whispered. The recording ended. I stared at the laptop, pulse roaring in my ears. The rage was unlike anything I'd ever felt. Not even when my wife died. Not even when Emily told me how Daniel had abandoned her years ago. This was different. This was evil. Calculated, rehearsed, intentional evil. Patricia gently closed the laptop. Mr. Miller, Emily didn't want you to hear these while she was alive. She didn't want you to carry more pain. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. Why didn't she tell me he visited? Why did she face him alone? Patricia's eyes filled with tears. She knew you'd confront him, and she was scared you'd do something dangerous. She wanted to protect you even then. That was Emily. Even dying, she was thinking about me. The unfairness of it all pressed down on my chest. Emily should have never had to hear Daniel's voice again. She should have spent her final weeks surrounded by love, not threats. But she didn't tell me, and now I understood why. She knew Daniel would push me past my limits. She knew confronting him then might have led to something irreversible. She knew I might have ended up in prison before she even passed. Hearing those recordings made something painfully clear. Daniel hadn't come to the funeral spontaneously. He hadn't resurfaced because of grief. He hadn't spoken to me outside the church out of respect. Every move he made had been calculated. He knew Emily was dying. He knew she was worth millions. He knew I was the sole heir. He knew his time was running out. And he thought a grieving, elderly father would fold under pressure. He thought wrong. The next morning, I brought the recordings to Michael. He listened silently, jaw tightening with every passing minute. When the second recording ended, he closed his eyes and rubbed his temple. David, this isn't just civil litigation anymore. This is extortion. This is coercion. This is harassment of a terminal patient. This is criminal. Yes, I said. We're fighting back. Oh, we're doing more than fighting, Michael replied, voice firm. We're going to dismantle him, piece by piece. He thumped the recordings lightly with the back of his pen. These are our nuclear weapons. Then he leaned forward. And I suspect Daniel will panic when he learns we have them. I nodded slowly, because Michael didn't know what I knew. Daniel was already panicking, and panicked men do unpredictable things. For a brief moment, I believed we finally had the upper hand. We had the recordings. We had Patricia's testimony. We had proof that Daniel had approached Emily multiple times, pressuring her for money while she was fighting for her life. But evil rarely stops at one victim, and Daniel Peterson was far from a one-time villain. It was late evening when it arrived. A message on my phone from an unknown number. Mr. Miller, we need to talk about Daniel Peterson. Your daughter wasn't the first woman he tried this with. Attached was a name, Rachel Porter. I froze, the words sinking into me like ice. Emily wasn't his first target? The thought made my skin crawl. I replied immediately, Who is this? The answer came quickly. I'm Rachel's brother. Please meet me tomorrow. This is important. He sent a location. A small cafe on the west side of town. I didn't know who this man was. But if Daniel had done to Rachel what he did to Emily, I needed to know. The next day, I walked into the cafe. A man in his early 40s stood up as soon as he saw me. He looked tired, worn out, like someone carrying years of stress on his shoulders. You must be Mr. Miller, he said, offering a firm handshake. I'm Thomas Porter. We sat. He wasted no time. I'll get straight to the point. Daniel Peterson destroyed my sister's life. My stomach tightened. Thomas pulled out a folder thick, worn, stuffed with documents, photos, and printed emails. My sister Rachel dated Daniel about 8 years ago. He charmed her, convinced her he loved her, then drained her savings, sabotaged her business, and left her with nothing. I felt my pulse quicken. Rachel tried taking legal action, Thomas continued, but Daniel vanished before she could pursue it. No forwarding address, no phone number. Changed his job, his circle, everything. The more he spoke, the more it felt like hearing Emily's story in reverse. But that's not all, Thomas said, sliding the folder toward me. He resurfaced 2 years later when Rachel started rebuilding her life. He opened a page. This is a copy of an email Daniel sent her when he found out she'd opened a new boutique. The email read, Rachel, I know you're doing well now. Maybe it's time we talked about what I'm owed. My blood simmered. Sound familiar? Thomas asked. Too familiar. Then Thomas flipped to a darker page, a restraining order request. Denied. Rachel tried everything, he whispered. But Daniel always stayed one step ahead. Eventually, she just gave up. What happened to her? I asked quietly. Thomas looked down, voice cracking. She ended her life 5 years ago. The air left my lungs. I'm not saying Daniel caused it directly, he whispered, but she told me before she died that Daniel drained the last hope she had. He leaned forward, eyes burning with a familiar rage. When I heard he was after your daughter, I couldn't stay silent. I closed the folder slowly, absorbing every word. Emily wasn't the first. She wasn't even the second. There could be more women. And Daniel wasn't just a greedy ex-husband. He was a serial predator who hunted vulnerable women for money. Did Rachel have money? I asked. Not much, but Daniel believed she would eventually. He liked women who were going somewhere, as he put it. I swallowed hard. Did Rachel ever mention how Daniel got information about her finances? About her personal life? Yes, Thomas said. He had friends, shady types, people who weren't afraid to dig into private records. He bribed, manipulated, threatened, whatever it took. Emily had mentioned similar concerns to Patricia. He had sources. He knew about her assets. He knew about her prognosis. He knew too much. Thomas, I said slowly. Emily recorded her interactions with Daniel. We have his threats on tape. He froze. You do? Yes. And you're going to use them? Oh, we're going to do much more than that. Because now I knew. Daniel didn't just stumble back into Emily's life. He targeted her intentionally, because he had done it before and gotten away with it. Not this time. When I returned home, I laid out everything we knew on my desk. Rachel's case, the recordings, Daniel's financial downfall, his debt, his manipulation, his threats, his sudden reappearance. Then it hit me, the timing. Daniel had approached Emily again just weeks before she died. And he did the same to Rachel, returning when she was vulnerable. Daniel had a pattern. Target a financially successful woman. Disappear after draining what he could. Reappear when she became successful again. Intimidate or manipulate her into giving him money. If she refused, threaten legal action or ruin. He had perfected a method. And Emily, already fighting for her life, became an easy mark in his eyes. I felt my hands tremble as I wrote down one final line. Daniel Peterson is a serial exploiter. And Emily was meant to be his next jackpot. Not anymore. When I showed everything to Michael, he stood up abruptly. This changes everything, he said. Daniel isn't just making a false inheritance claim. He's part of a pattern of fraud and exploitation. Michael's eyes burned with newfound determination. We're not waiting for Daniel to make the next move. We'll take the offensive. How? I asked. We file a preemptive injunction, he said. We submit the recordings. We present Rachel's case as evidence of pattern behavior. We involve financial investigators. We freeze Daniel's ability to file any claims. And then, Michael smiled coldly. Then we bury him legally before he ever gets a chance to touch a courtroom. For the first time since Emily died, I felt something that wasn't grief or rage. I felt control. But control wouldn't last long. Because Daniel, backed into a corner, was about to make a desperate move. By the time I finished speaking with Michael and Thomas, I was exhausted. Not physically, but emotionally. My mind felt like a tangled knot of anger, grief, and grim determination. I kept thinking of Emily's voice in those recordings, breathless and weary, still trying to stand firm even while cancer hollowed out her strength. She faced Daniel alone, and I would never forgive myself for that. But things were different now. We had evidence. We had allies. We had Rachel's story. And most importantly, we had a plan. All that remained was to let Michael file the injunction and let the law do its work. Or so I thought. I didn't realize that while we were building a case, Daniel had begun building something else. Something darker. Something personal. It was around 11:45 p.m. Sleet was hitting the windows, rattling them like thin bones. I just returned home after grabbing a late dinner. The streets were empty and quiet, the kind of night where the world feels like it's asleep. I walked up the porch steps of my house, pulled my keys from my coat pocket, and froze, because sitting on my doormat was a single black envelope. Thin, unmarked, no stamp. Someone had placed it there by hand. My chest tightened. My neighborhood had no foot traffic. Nobody ever came up the driveway without ringing the bell. And certainly not at midnight. I looked around. The street was empty. No cars. No silhouettes. No shadows moving behind trees. A cold feeling crept into my spine. Someone had been here. Someone had been close enough to reach my front door unnoticed. I crouched and picked up the envelope. It was cold. Colder than it should have been, as if it had just been dropped. Inside was a folded piece of paper. No handwriting. No signature. Just a printed message. Drop the case or you'll join Emily. I stared at the words, my pulse pounding in my ears. Join Emily. It wasn't a threat about lawsuits. It wasn't a negotiation. This was a warning about my life. In that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt yet. Fear. Not for myself, but for what Daniel was capable of. I drove straight to Michael's house, ignoring the rain, ignoring the speed limits. He opened the door in a t-shirt and sweatpants but sobered instantly when he saw the envelope. He read the note. His expression hardened like stone. "This isn't a threat," he said. "This is intimidation. A criminal act." "You think Daniel sent it?" Michael exhaled slowly. "It's either him or someone working with him." That possibility chilled me even more. "David," he said firmly, "I'm filing a police report first thing in the morning. And I'm also pulling in a private investigator. If Daniel thinks fear will stop us, he's stupid." But I shook my head. "Michael, this isn't about the case anymore. Daniel is losing control. That makes him dangerous." Michael nodded grimly. "I know. And that's exactly why we need to keep pushing. Backing down now would signal to him that his tactics work." He was right. But fear had already begun creating cracks in my resolve. What if Daniel wasn't acting alone? What if he had people watching? What if he'd been following me? But nothing prepared me for what happened next. When I returned home the next morning, I remembered something. My doorbell camera. I almost didn't check it. Part of me didn't want to know. But I forced myself to pull up the footage. At 11:29 p.m., just 16 minutes before I found the envelope, a figure approached my porch. Tall, thin, hooded. He didn't walk like someone nervous or in a hurry. He walked with a kind of casual confidence, hands in pockets, posture relaxed. When he reached the door, he paused and looked directly into the camera, directly into the lens, as if he wanted me to know he'd been there. The footage auto-enhanced the image, and the face came into focus. Daniel Peterson, looking calm, composed, almost amused. He placed the black envelope gently on the doormat, then leaned closer to the camera. I watched, breath frozen, as he moved his lips, mouthing words silently. I rewound the footage and zoomed in. 3 words. "Let it go." Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the night like a man who owned the darkness. My hands trembled as I lowered the phone. He wasn't hiding anymore. He wasn't pretending to be grieving. He wasn't negotiating. He had stepped fully into the open. And the message was clear. If I didn't stop, he would escalate. By noon, Michael's private investigator, a retired detective named Carter Briggs, had already gathered information. Carter arrived at my house, shook my hand, and went straight to the point. "Daniel's been shadowing you for at least a week," he said. "Probably longer." My breath caught. He showed me printed pictures, zoomed shots from street cameras. Daniel's car trailing mine. Daniel standing across the street from Michael's office. Daniel parked near Patricia's apartment. "How long has he been doing this?" I asked. Carter shrugged. "He's sloppy, but he's persistent. My guess? Since Emily passed away." "He followed me to the funeral?" Carter nodded. "I found footage of him arriving early and leaving late." A sick feeling churned in my stomach. Daniel wasn't just after the inheritance. He wanted control. Control over me. Control over the narrative. Control over the fear. He was unraveling, and unraveling men do dangerous, irreversible things. That night, I sat alone in my living room, staring at the envelope, the threat, Daniel's face frozen on my doorbell camera. And a chilling thought hit me. Daniel wasn't afraid of being caught. He wasn't hiding his face. He wasn't concealing his identity. Why? Because he didn't think I could stop him. He didn't think the law mattered. He didn't think anything mattered anymore. Daniel wasn't just desperate. He was spiraling. And spiraling men don't bluff. If Daniel had crossed lines before, the next day he obliterated them. Up until now, he had threatened, manipulated, stalked, and intimidated. But in part 7, I learned something chilling. Daniel wasn't just after the inheritance. He was determined to erase Emily's name unless I obeyed him. It was the first time I felt a different kind of fear. Not for myself, not even for my safety, but for Emily's memory. Her legacy, her work, her reputation. Everything she built with passion, creativity, and grit. Daniel understood something terrible about grief. Sometimes destroying a memory hurts far worse than destroying a life. At 10:15 a.m., while Carter, the private investigator, and I were reviewing the footage of Daniel stalking my house, my phone rang. The caller ID made my stomach drop. Miller Fashion, corporate office, Emily's company. I answered instantly. Mr. Miller? Yes. This is Olivia Chun, the head of public relations. We have a situation. My heart pounded. What happened? Olivia hesitated, then said the words that made my vision blur. We received an official complaint this morning. Someone filed a legal document claiming Emily's business is tied to fraudulent activity, and they're using your name as part of the allegations. I felt like someone had slapped me across the face. What? Yes. The filing claims Emily's company covered up millions in hidden assets before her death. That you, her father, illegally transferred funds from her business to yourself. I felt the room tilt. Who filed the complaint? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Olivia responded with a shaky voice. A man named Daniel Peterson. I gripped the edge of the table so hard my knuckles turned white. Daniel hadn't just declared legal war. He had gone after Emily's company, the place she poured her soul into, the brand she built from scratch, the thing she worked for even during chemotherapy. He was willing to stain it, drag it through the mud, destroy it publicly, all to pressure me, all to break me. I called Michael and put the phone on speaker. Michael, I said sharply. Daniel filed a fraud claim against Emily's company, using my name. I heard a moment of stunned silence. Then his voice hardened. That son of a... He cut himself off and regained composure. He's escalating. We knew he would. But this is harassment, I said. He's trying to ruin her work. It's not just harassment. This is defamation, malicious prosecution, and corporate sabotage. What do? We counterfile immediately, Michael said, voice clipped and controlled. And we inform the corporate board. They need to know this claim holds zero merit. But Olivia's voice from the phone interrupted us. Mr. Miller, the more urgent problem is online. My throat tightened. What about online? There's a rumor circulating on a forum. Someone posted the same fraud accusation anonymously, and people are beginning to speculate. Daniel wasn't attacking privately anymore. He was weaponizing the internet. I opened my laptop and typed in the forum Olivia mentioned. It only took a second. 7 new posts, 7 anonymous accounts, all repeating slight variations of the same lie. Emily Miller hid money from investors. Her father is trying to cash out illegally. The company shouldn't trust the family. There needs to be an audit. Each message looked different, but the writing style, sentence structure, and timing were identical. Carter leaned over my shoulder. He's creating a fake wave of accusations, hoping panic will make the board distance themselves from you. And in business, perception was everything. A single rumor, even without proof, can poison trust. Daniel knew that, and he used it mercilessly. I had seen Daniel stalk me. Daniel threaten me. Daniel threaten Emily. Daniel extort her while she was dying. Daniel hover around her funeral like a vulture. But this was different. Emily survived abuse. She survived abandonment. She survived heartbreak. But she didn't survive cancer. Her company, her legacy, was the one thing she left behind that lived on. And Daniel wanted to drag it into the dirt. Make the world question her honesty. Make her employees doubt her. Make the public turn on her name. He was attacking what she left behind because he couldn't attack her anymore. And that broke something inside me. The board of Emily's company scheduled an emergency virtual meeting at 6 p.m. I joined with Michael beside me. On the screen appeared Olivia Chun, PR head, Jonah Lewis, corporate director, Meera Patel, chief legal officer. For other board members, the tension was thick. "Mr. Miller," Jonah said, "we want to assure you we don't believe the accusations. But Daniel's filing means we must investigate formally." "I understand," I said. "Do whatever you need to do." Then Meera spoke. "Daniel's claim has no legal standing, but the online smear campaign is troubling. It's gaining visibility." "How much visibility?" Michael asked. Meera hesitated. "Nearly 18,000 views. And rising." My heart sank. 18,000 strangers reading lies about Emily. 18,000 people spreading rumors about her business. 18,000 seeds of doubt. It was exactly what Daniel wanted. "If this continues," Jonah added grimly, "the company's reputation could suffer significant damage." I leaned toward the screen. "Then you need to fight with us," I said. "Not against us." Meera nodded. "We intend to. We've already flagged the anonymous posts. We're tracing IP addresses. If they link back to Daniel or anyone connected to him, we will pursue criminal charges." "Good. Let Daniel feel hunted for once." Just as the meeting ended, Carter burst into my home office holding his tablet. "I found something." "What is it?" I asked urgently. He zoomed in on an IP address linked to one of the anonymous posts. "Look," he said. "This IP was used last week to access your social media and email accounts." My eyes widened. "Daniel tried to hack me?" "Yes, but that's not the important part." Carter layered multiple IP logs on the screen. "They're all from the same location, a rental property in Evanston." I frowned. "Who lives there?" Carter smirked grimly. "No one. It's an Airbnb, booked under a fake name." I swallowed. "Whose?" Carter tapped the screen. "Daniel Peterson. 3 weeks ago." I exhaled sharply. The online attacks, the fake accusations, the smear campaign, the stalking, everything pointed to one man. Daniel had been orchestrating his digital assault from a rented property, hiding behind anonymity, thinking he was clever. But now we had proof. Actual proof. Proof that could bury him in court. "There's more," he added. "We pulled the camera footage from the Airbnb complex." "Footage of Daniel?" "Yes, but we found something else." He turned the screen toward me. It showed Daniel inside the rental property with 2 other men. Men I didn't recognize. Men with hardened expressions and nervous body language. Carter spoke quietly. "Those aren't friends. Those are debt collectors. The dangerous kind." "And?" I asked. "And based on the audio we managed to capture." He paused. "Daniel promised them a major payout soon. As in, within days." I felt a sickening heaviness settle in my chest. Daniel wasn't acting alone anymore. He wasn't desperate alone. He had involved dangerous people. Men who wanted their money and didn't care how they got it. Emily's inheritance had become more than greed. It had become part of a criminal circle. A circle willing to do anything to get paid. The next morning, I woke with a strange heaviness in my chest. The kind you can't explain, the kind that sits in your gut like a warning. I barely slept. My mind kept circling the same truth. Daniel wasn't acting alone anymore. He'd involved dangerous men. Men who weren't there for drama or threats. Men who didn't care about Emily, lawsuits, or moral lines. They cared only about money. Fast money. Guaranteed money. And Daniel had promised them a payout. Within days. Which meant one thing: they would come looking for it. At 6:40 a.m., I walked outside to grab the newspaper. An old habit that felt strangely grounding amid the chaos. The morning air was crisp, unnervingly quiet. Then I noticed something I hadn't seen the night before. A black sedan parked across the street. Tinted windows. Engine off. No movement. It wasn't anyone from the neighborhood. I forced myself not to stare. Instead, I went back inside and watched through the curtains. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then the driver's door opened. A man stepped out, tall, bulky, wearing a black jacket and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. He wasn't looking around casually. He wasn't waiting for someone. He was observing, watching my house, calculating. I recognized him from Carter's footage, one of the men who met Daniel in the Airbnb. My pulse quickened. He paced slowly, scanning the neighborhood as if looking for witnesses. Then he lifted his hand to his ear, a subtle gesture, the kind you see in surveillance footage. He was talking to someone through a small earpiece. That was all I needed to see. I pulled out my phone and called Carter. Carter didn't ask questions. He simply said, "I'll be there in 5 minutes." When he arrived, the sedan was still across the street. But the man was gone. "He's scoping you out," Carter said, scanning the area, "trying to figure out your schedule, seeing when you come out, when you're alone." "Why?" "Because Daniel promised them money. And if Daniel can't pay," he paused, "they'll take it out on whoever they think can." Me. I felt sick. They're not after a lawsuit. They don't care about the inheritance itself. They care about leverage. These guys make their money by scaring people into giving it. "So what now?" I asked. Carter checked his phone. "We up security. And I talked to Daniel." "No," I said instantly. "No more talking. He's past reason." Carter shook his head. "I wasn't going to reason with him." His voice hardened. "I was going to warn him." Carter went to confront Daniel at his apartment. The real one, not the Airbnb he used for his online attacks. I stayed home waiting for a call. My nerves buzzed like electric wires. 15 minutes later, Carter texted, "He's here. I'm going in." 10 minutes after that, "David, you're not going to believe what I just found." Then my phone rang. Carter didn't waste time. "Daniel's place is a disaster," he said. "Piles of unpaid bills, eviction notices, letters from collection agencies, even court summons for unpaid debts." I gripped the phone tightly. He's cornered, completely cornered. He has no money, nowhere to go, and now he owes people who don't wait for payment. "What did he say when you confronted him?" Carter exhaled sharply. "He tried to act tough at first. Then he got nervous, started pacing. He knows his men went to your house." My stomach dropped. "He admitted it?" "He didn't deny it," Carter said. "Which is the same thing." Carter continued. "And then he said something that made the hair on my neck stand up." "What?" "He said, 'Tell the old man to settle now or things will get loud.'" "Loud?" I repeated. "He means violent," Carter said bluntly. "These guys aren't bluffing. Daniel is out of his depth, and he's dragging you into his mess." I sat down heavily. "What are you saying, Carter?" "I'm saying this has gone beyond law and logic. These men don't care about police reports. They don't fear prison. They fear not getting paid. And Daniel promised them the inheritance?" "Yes, and they want it now." I closed my eyes. This wasn't about a case anymore. This wasn't even about Daniel's greed. This was survival. It happened later that evening. I was in the kitchen washing dishes when I heard the unmistakable sound of gravel crunching under heavy footsteps. I froze. Someone was walking up the driveway. Slowly, deliberately. I turned off the faucet and stepped to the window. A man in a dark jacket. Not the same one from the morning, but another from the Airbnb footage, walked straight to my back door. No hesitation. No attempt to hide. He tried the handle. Locked. He tried again, harder this time. The door rattled. My heart hammered against my ribs. He stepped back, looked around, then reached into his coat. For a split second, I feared he was pulling out a weapon. But instead, he pulled out something else. A metal tool. A lockpick. He was breaking in. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and dialed 911. The operator picked up. "911, what's your emergency?" "There's a man trying to break into my home," I whispered. "Please send someone. Please." The man forced the tool into the lock. The door shook violently. Then, by some miracle, he stopped. He looked toward the street. Headlights. Carter's car. The man stepped back from the door, cursed under his breath, and sprinted across the yard, disappearing into the neighbor's trees. Carter burst through the front door seconds later. "Are you okay?" he asked. I nodded, but my hands were trembling. "He tried to get in," I whispered. "He would have come inside." Carter looked at the door, then at me. "This ends now," he said. "Tonight." 20 minutes later, we were on a three-way call with Michael. "David," Michael said, "this is attempted home invasion. Combined with stalking, extortion, online harassment, and threats, this is enough to bury Daniel legally. But the men working with him," Michael cut me off, "will get the police involved. And not just local authorities. Financial crimes, cybercrimes, organized crime if necessary. If Daniel brought these men into this situation, he is responsible for everything they do." Carter added, "And tomorrow morning we file everything simultaneously. As soon as the courts open." Michael's voice sharpened with fire. "We're taking this to the top, David. We're done reacting. Now we attack." I exhaled a long, shaky breath. For the first time, I felt like we had a way out. A way to stop Daniel. A way to reclaim control. But fate wasn't done with us yet. Because just when I thought things couldn't escalate further, Daniel did something that crossed the final line. Something that made everything personal in a way I never imagined. I didn't think anything Daniel did could shock me anymore. He had stalked me, threatened me, tried to force his way into my home, used dangerous men to intimidate me, dragged Emily's name through the mud, tried to destroy her company. But the next morning, he proved there was no bottom to how low he was willing to sink. Because on that morning, the morning after the attempted break-in, Daniel didn't attack my property, my reputation, or my peace. He attacked Emily's memory in the most twisted way possible. At 7:02 a.m., my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Not Carter, not Michael, not the police. I checked the camera before opening. A delivery driver stood outside holding a bouquet of flowers. Huge, colorful, expensive-looking. My stomach tightened. Who would send me flowers? I opened the door. The young man smiled awkwardly. "Delivery for Mr. David Miller." "Who sent it?" I asked. He shrugged. "Doesn't say. Just told me it was urgent." He handed me a sleek, white envelope attached to the bouquet. I pulled it off and opened it. The message inside made my blood turn to ice. "Happy heavenly birthday to Emily. She would have wanted the money to go to someone who loved her. Don't make this harder." And underneath it, Daniel's signature. My legs almost buckled. Emily's birthday. She would have turned 35 today. He used her birthday, the first one she wasn't alive to celebrate, to taunt me, to manipulate me, to push me closer to giving him money. This wasn't a threat anymore. It was desecration. The sickest form of cruelty. My hands shook so violently I had to set the flowers down before I crushed them. Carter arrived minutes later, and when I showed him the note, his expression changed completely. The calm, controlled investigator I knew vanished. "What kind of monster does this?" he muttered, pacing in anger. "A monster who knows how grief works," I said quietly. "He knows I'd do anything to protect Emily, and he thinks that using her memory will break me." "It won't," Carter snapped. "If anything, it just sealed his fate." He pulled out his phone and called Michael immediately. "Mike, it's Carter. Daniel just sent a message. Not a threat, something worse. You need to see it." He put the phone on speaker. "Describe it," Michael said. I read the message aloud. The line went silent for a moment. Then Michael spoke, his voice trembling with fury. "That isn't just harassment or intimidation. That is emotional cruelty weaponized. Judges hate this. Juries hate this even more. And when we show this to the police, they'll see how unhinged he is." "What's our next step?" I asked. Michael exhaled sharply. "We file everything today. Every document, every threat, every piece of evidence. And David, don't leave your house alone until this is over." For the first time, I heard fear in his voice. By noon, we were sitting in front of Detective Laura Hathaway. a sharp, seasoned officer who had handled cases just like this for 20 years. She listened to our story without interrupting. Then she asked to see the recordings, the threatening envelope, the stalking footage, the online smear evidence, Carter's investigative findings, the break-in attempt footage, and the birthday message. When she finished reviewing everything, she leaned back slowly. "This is a dangerous man," she said. "Not just because he's desperate, but because he's slipping out of reality." She tapped her pen against the table. "He's losing control, and he's recruiting people who are even worse." "What can you do?" I asked. Her expression hardened. "A lot. We're issuing a protective order immediately. We're also launching a criminal investigation into Daniel Peterson and the men working with him." "What charges?" Carter asked. She listed them: stalking, extortion, conspiracy to commit fraud, harassment of a terminal patient, attempted break-in, online identity misuse, threats of violence, dangerous association with individuals of criminal interest. My jaw tightened. "And we're putting patrol cars near your home for 72 hours, she added, "until we know Daniel and his associates have been located." "Located?" I repeated uneasily. Detective Hathaway nodded. "We went to his apartment this morning. He wasn't there. The place was half-packed, like he left in a hurry. His car is gone. His phone is off." Carter and I exchanged a worried glance. Daniel was missing, and missing criminals are the worst kind. We returned home after filing every possible charge. Carter stayed with me. He refused to leave me alone, especially now that Daniel had disappeared. The police patrolled the street every hour. I kept every door locked, every curtain drawn, every camera feed open on my tablet. And yet, a tight feeling in my chest wouldn't go away. Because men like Daniel don't disappear. They plan. They plot. They wait for the right moment to strike. At 7:18 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. Carter leaned forward. "Don't answer." But something told me I had to. I picked it up and pressed it to my ear. A familiar voice breathed on the other end. "David." "Daniel." My heart raced. "You shouldn't have done this," he hissed. "You shouldn't have involved them." "Daniel, the police are searching for you. It's over." He laughed. A hollow, delirious sound. "Oh, David, you think lawyers and cops scare me? You think anyone can stop this now?" My hand tightened on the phone. "What do you want?" Daniel didn't answer the question. Instead, he whispered something that froze my blood. "Look outside." Carter grabbed my wrist to stop me, but it was too late. I turned toward the window, and I saw something that made my breath vanish. A figure, standing in the dark, watching my house. Not Daniel. One of the men he hired. Daniel's voice slithered back through the phone. "You made this war, David. And now, I'm not fighting alone." Then the line went dead. The moment Daniel whispered, "Look outside," and hung up, time seemed to slow. Carter leapt to the window, pulling the curtains slightly aside with 2 fingers, careful not to expose us. The man outside stood completely still, not pacing, not fumbling, not pretending to be a passerby, just watching, like he had all the time in the world, like he knew exactly what his presence meant. Carter's jaw clenched. "That's not a warning," he said. "That's a message. Daniel's telling you he's lost control, and his men are acting on their own." "Why?" "Because when desperate men think they won't get paid, they start improvising." Carter called Detective Hathaway immediately. "Detective, we've got one of Daniel's men outside the house." Her voice sharpened instantly. "Stay inside. Officers are 2 minutes out. Do not engage." Carter hung up. But 2 minutes can feel like an eternity when danger stands outside your door, especially when the danger starts moving. The man approached the porch slowly, deliberately, as if testing how far he could go before we reacted. Carter grabbed a heavy flashlight from the table, gripping it like a weapon. "Back away from the windows," he ordered. I obeyed instinctively. Then we heard it, the sound of a hand trying the front doorknob. Click, click, click. I felt my heart slam against my ribs. Locked, Carter whispered. Yes, I replied. But the man didn't stop. He jiggled it harder. Click, click, click. Then a loud thud. He kicked the door. Another thud. And another. Carter moved me behind him. He's testing the door's strength. He's not just here to scare you, David. He's here for something else. What? Carter looked at me grimly. Desperate men don't leave empty-handed. Just as the man stepped back, clearly preparing for a stronger kick, blue lights flashed across the windows. 2 patrol cars screeched to a stop outside. The man bolted instantly, sprinting across the yard and disappearing between houses like smoke. Officers chased after him on foot. One stayed behind to check on us. Stay inside, the officer said. We're sweeping the area. He can't have gotten far. But Carter shook his head. He's one of Daniel's men. They know how to slip away. This wasn't a random visit. We waited in tense silence for 30 minutes while police searched the neighborhood. They didn't find him. I wasn't surprised. This wasn't over. Not even close. Detective Hathaway arrived shortly after. Frustration etched on her face. We missed him by seconds, she muttered. But I think Daniel's losing allies. Criminal networks get impatient when money doesn't come fast. Then she dropped a bombshell. We traced Daniel's last call to you. My pulse surged. And? I asked. It wasn't from his phone. I stared at her. What do you mean? He used a burner device, cheap, prepaid, unregistered. But we traced the signal to a tower near Lakeshore Industrial Park. Carter's eyes narrowed. That area's abandoned. Hathaway nodded. Exactly. Which means Daniel is likely hiding there. My stomach twisted. Daniel wasn't running. He wasn't hiding in a hotel or a friend's home. He had gone into the shadows, where the law couldn't easily reach him, and where he could coordinate with dangerous people undisturbed. And the way he had spoken on the phone. You made this war, David. It wasn't a threat. It was a declaration. At 11:21 p.m., my phone rang again. This time I didn't recognize the number, but something in me knew who it was. Carter tried to snatch the phone, but I answered quickly. David, Daniel said. His voice was cracking now, the calm facade slipping. They're after me. They want their money. Good, I said coldly. You brought this on yourself. He laughed, hysterical, broken. I thought you'd settle by now. I didn't want it to get this far. You sent men to my house, Daniel. They tried to break in. I didn't tell them to do that, he shrieked. They're acting on their own. I can't control them anymore. His breathing grew rapid. I need the money, David. Just some of it. Enough to pay them off. Enough to disappear. No, I said fiercely. It ends tonight. He went silent, then whispered. Then we both die. Before I could respond, the line cut. Carter grabbed his coat. Detective Hathaway needs to trace that call. Now. We drove to the station at reckless speed. The call was traced, again, to Lakeshore Industrial Park. This time the police moved fast. 5 patrol cars. 2 unmarked units. Detective Hathaway leading the operation. When we arrived, the area was pitch black. Long-abandoned warehouses, cracked concrete, busted windows. Wind howled through broken metal vents. Officers fanned out. Stay behind us, Hathaway ordered. We moved cautiously between the buildings, flashlights cutting narrow beams through the dark. Then we heard it. A scream. High-pitched. Panicked. Daniel's voice. Get away from me. I don't have it. I don't have it. The sound echoed through the corridor of rusted steel. We turned the corner. And there he was. Daniel Peterson. On his knees. 2 men, the same ones from the Airbnb footage, standing over him. One held a metal pipe. The other held a knife. Daniel was bleeding from his cheek, shaking violently. I told you, he screamed. The old man won't pay. He's filing lawsuits. The man with the knife growled. Then you better find another way. Police, Detective Hathaway shouted. Drop your weapons. The men turned, furious and wild-eyed, but quickly realized they were surrounded. Officers stormed in. One man ran. The other fought. Both were taken down within seconds. Daniel collapsed onto the ground, sobbing. "It wasn't my fault," he cried. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." Hathaway looked at him with disgust. "You manipulated a dying woman, threatened her father, hired criminals, and you think you're innocent." Daniel crawled toward me, tears streaking through dirt on his face. "David, please tell them I didn't mean it." I stepped back. "You broke Emily's heart while she was alive," I said, "and you tried to destroy her legacy after she died. I'll never defend you." Daniel froze. Something inside him shattered. And finally, he stopped fighting. He hung his head as officers handcuffed him. For the first time since Emily's passing, I felt like I could breathe. Within 48 hours, Daniel faced charges for extortion, conspiracy to commit fraud, stalking, harassment, attempted break-in, threats, cybercrimes, and reckless endangerment. His two associates faced even heavier charges. The smear campaign halted. The online rumors vanished. Emily's company issued a statement defending her legacy. The board offered their full support, and the injunction ensured Daniel could never contest the inheritance again. He would spend years, possibly decades, behind bars. But none of that brought Emily back. And it never would. Weeks later, I visited Emily's grave. The air was still. The sky was soft and gray. I placed a single white rose on her headstone. "I kept my promise," I whispered. "No one will ever hurt you again." A quiet peace settled over me. Not happiness, not relief, but closure. Emily had fought her battles alone far too long. But in the end, I fought the final one for her. And won.